As we all know that security teams spend hours creating phishing simulations and customizing training for every employee. But bad actors can now use AI to launch deepfakes and spear phishing attacks in seconds. Can you counter that with AI? Can AI agent actually run your security awareness program autonomously to keep up with bad actors? And more importantly, can you really trust it? And today we have with us Harlan Parrott, VP of AI Innovation at KnowBe4, to share how their ADA agents are doing exactly that. Harlan, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Swapnil.
It's my pleasure. First of all, if I'm not wrong, you were recently named VP of AI Innovation at KnowBe4, and you are leading their AI Center of Excellence. I want to know because right now we live in an AI-driven world. Every discussion is about AI, and it's not about experimental phase. It's not about pilots. It's moving into production. Talk a bit about what is your vision when it comes to AI KnowBe4 for 2026.
Awesome question to get us started. And I will say we've had a good bit of time in the first 30, 60 days of my role getting this shaped. And here's what I would tell you. So the mission for our Center of Excellence, the first is market and customer facing. So we want to make sure that our customers are the best protected against human and agent risks. That's kind of the first priority. And then the second piece is more about how we do that. So in order to achieve that outcome, one of the things we've definitely recognized and is showing up in the market for us is that we can't just secure that agentic workforce. We have to be one. So a big part of what I'm doing is baking in agent-based workflows and innovation internally within KnowBe4 to ensure that our innovation keeps pace with the innovation of the threat actors that are out there. And I would say, yeah, it's an interesting thing being in role, and one of the reasons I'm really excited to have taken this role is tied to my background. So I've been at this for over 20 years now, and I think I've had every job you can have at a SaaS company. I've done professional services, customer success, engineering, product management, and I think that sort of founder style generalist role is really what's needed for this moment. What it's letting us do as a center of excellence is engage with our various business leaders and really focus on rethinking from first principles, working backwards from our actual customer needs, retaining that customer obsession and driving that innovation at the pace that is possible.
Thank you so much for not only detailing your whole career growth as well, but also what vision you're bringing to KnowBe4. Now, KnowBe4, and I am sure that you're going to correct me, has 8 active AI agents in the market, and ADA just celebrated its 10th anniversary. Talk a bit about how does that shift, as you said, you have a long, career, history in this space. How does the shift from AI assistants to fully automated agents, where they are actually making decisions on the fly, fundamentally changes the way a security team operates day to day?
Yeah. So first, congratulations on the homework. I would say we've been moving quickly this year, and in the last even just few weeks, we've moved from 7 active AI agents in market to 11. So back on that previous mention of the pace of innovation, our customers are seeing it show up in their actual consoles. And when I talk with customers about there's kind of 2 things that come out pretty clearly and consistently. The first is the threat actors, the actual attackers. They're using AI at the moment to supercharge their efforts, right? So they're changing their tactics and techniques to completely supercharge their approach. And what we're sort of telling our customers and what they're seeing in the ones that are using our tools effectively are that they're able to go and adapt and keep pace and automate and personalize the human risk management activities they perform to ensure that their workforce stays resilient to these threats. And that's really, I think, going to be the focus over the next few years. We're going to see increasing numbers of clever techniques that attackers use to change their approach and generate at scale more effective targeted attacks. And we're going to see our customers use the tools we provide to innovate, automate, personalize the resiliency techniques and generate a resilient workforce as a result.
Can you talk about the threat landscape, because that is also changing very fast, because everybody is starting to use AI. Bad actors actually do a much better job. They are actually no offenses, but they are some of the smartest people on the planet, to be honest. And as Linus once said, that I wish those were on our side versus on the opposite side. And especially with agentic AI, it is making these attacks even more sophisticated. Deepfakes, multi-vector social engineering, which is accessible to everyone. So in your view, how has the human risk also changed, the speed, and how can security teams keep up with that?
Yeah, and I will say, like I said, it's going to be challenging for everyone, including our customers. But there's a couple of things. First, just some data to support what you said. We're seeing this from our customers. We completed one of our annual surveys last year across our 70,000 customer base, and one of the things that we've seen as an emerging trend is that that those threat actors have completely pivoted to using AI to generate the content, the phishing landscape. And so we're seeing 83% of the attacks that show up in our customers are actually AI driven now. And this is an amazing stat for you. More than 40% are bypassing those traditional protection mechanisms, right? Because the content is so personalized and so highly variable, it's really difficult for traditional techniques to pick those up. And so in addition to obviously having some of our own advanced threat detection we plug in line with the emails, we also really focus on adapting the organization to that human risk management approach. And that's what lets us drive. Last year, what we saw is the phish prone score reduced by 86% or higher in the first year for our customers. So that's really what you should be targeting, is accept the fact that, the products will continue to evolve. That'll be a constant dance with the attackers and the defense techniques that are automated. But in addition, that resilient workforce, if you go and deploy the correct techniques, you'll see that change and show up in metrics. And then for the advanced techniques that we're seeing, this also requires you continue to adapt and be able to model the kinds of threats that are actually showing up in the users' inboxes. So an example there is we have a tool called the deepfake training content agent. What that'll do is actually generate for you a custom deepfake with a leader from your own organization that you can then use to show your user base and say, look, like this is how powerful these techniques are. They can actually see it from their own CEO talking to them and encouraging them to go and click a website and kind of take an action that they never would on their own. And so I think that combination of continuing to improve the actual deflection techniques, but then also continuing to create additional tools and techniques that model the types of threats that are showing up, so that workforce continues to be resilient against those. That combination is going to be key.
And when we talk about, if you look at ADA's goal, it is to move security away from manual administration to more automated. How much automation can we really trust? What is the human in loop? And how does it really affect day-to-day life of security teams?
One of the things we've heard loud and clear and consistently from our customers is that they still want humans to be making the decisions about the things that happen in their environment. So for us, the strategy very much involves humans being in the loop at the targeted places. But the way that we think about this is a combination of reducing the amount of tedious effort associated with performing security administration work, but then also increasing the quality and the expertise of the hybrid team. So a couple of examples for you. We have a template generation agent that takes, the task of generating the types of phishing emails that are of high quality, and then sending those out to their users, right? So that's kind of a tedious and kind of a difficult task, if you think about it, to go and create something that's up to the market, that matches the type of tone that's actually being observed in live phishing attacks that are showing up in the inboxes. But also there's some subtlety here, right? So there's a thing called the NIST Phish Scale, and that very few of the administrators we talk with are experts on how to calibrate a specific email against that scale so that you can measure risk effectively. That's baked into that knowledge and expertise is baked into the agent. So in addition to reducing the effort associated with that task, you actually get a higher quality result. The second example would be we have an orchestration agent that completely replaces the traditional canned campaigns that run once a year and give you the compliance checkbox, but don't really change the behavior or risk score at all. And this is really neat, because one of the things we realized when we dug into this is, hey, look, we don't actually need to do that traditional model any longer. What if we were to instead completely personalize the types of emails that we send and the campaigns we generate based on the type of risk that individual user is receiving? So if we see that it's the CFO and they're getting a bunch of really targeted emails to encourage them to go share data, maybe we will have a different type of training and a type of phishing simulation that we target at that user versus someone who's working on the help desk and receiving, much less personalized content and risk. And so I think that degree of individual user personalization is another example of how we're able to go and automate and then improve the capability of the team to do things that would just be unpractical to do otherwise.
And as you initially mentioned, that you recently added one more agent for the ADA orchestration. What is the long-term vision or the roadmap? Are there specific gaps that you are seeing in human risk management that you are trying to target and fill with these agents? Or you're like, no, we have enough agents now, or there'll be more agents who will come depending on the gaps you'll find? More
agents coming, right? So as the threat landscape evolves, you can imagine that we will introduce additional agents, and a lot of it is just driven by customer feedback. So we have a really live and active 70,000 strong customer base that engages with us every day from around the world. And that's the thing that really is amazing about the place that we live, is we have access to more data, and more customers across different languages, different locations, get visibility to the things that are happening as they're actually occurring. And that's what drives our roadmap. And then everything that we look at now, in addition to saying we need to go solve this problem, we also now ask, how can we solve it with an agent so we can make it easier to use, administer, deploy, and manage? And so that's what I would say is you can expect the pace of innovation to do nothing but increase, whether measured by agent count or new products or any number of other measures.
You folks call these AI agents like machine employees. Of course, you cannot fire them. You can always nuke them and get new ones. So there's no such drama there. But how do enterprises manage the combined risk of hybrid human AI workflows? Are you folks or enterprises training agents the same way we train humans to recognize phishing, or because they are, of course, AI based, they have an advantage also? It's very easy to replicate across organizations versus training humans. So talk about the pros and cons without making a lot of people unhappy that, oh, AI is going to take away our jobs. I feel that it actually empowers more people to save times on mundane tasks, so you can actually focus on more high quality stuff.
Yeah, and I will say, I think on that topic, this is really about, like I said before, increasing the quality and personalization and the experiences that we can create. I mean, that's our focus, is on the innovation side, not on, kind of the shape of jobs. But with that said, I think the first pillar is what we just talked about, right? The human risk on its own. And that, I think, just understanding that landscape is evolving, the threats and risks are increasing as a result of attackers getting smarter. So we've talked about that one already. There's a second pillar that I think is really important to mention, which is what you're alluding to, which is the agent risk in its own right. So the analogy I like to give to folks is, imagine that you've taken an entire business process and you've now outsourced it. So you packaged it up and you sent it to a different entity. You gave them some training in the first couple of weeks to tell them how you want it done, give them a standard operating procedure. And then now you're done, right? Now you're done. You handed it off. And for the next 5 years, it's going to continue to just operate and hum along perfectly, and you're going to have no issues. So for anyone that's ever gone through that type of an experience before, that's not at all how it works. Instead, what you realize is you need additional kind of quality control metrics. You need governance. You need the ability to observe and do quality inspections and continue to revise the operating procedures to match the landscape as the business evolves, right? So this is a living, breathing organism. And I think that analogy holds when it comes to our experience with agents. Requirements drift, the tools and the capabilities drift, and you should expect this to be something that needs a whole different set of techniques to go and manage the agent risk on its own. And it's really important to get right, because these agents are really powerful. They're also you can think of them as a form of a software program that runs inside your environment. So it has access to tools. It can talk to all of your data systems. It can do transactions. It can go and do lookups and gather data. And you really need to be confident when you deploy those agents that you know and you have provable evidence that it's behaving as expected when it's deployed. But there's a third one I think that's even more interesting, which is the intersection. So we've got the human and agent risk together. And so an example here is, you imagine a typical user out there and they get an email or they come across some cool prompt on the internet and they say, oh, let me go try that and run it in my environment. And then maybe that cool prompt says, hey, go look through your email, summarize all the customers you're pursuing, and then quote unquote, do research on this badsite.com for each one of those customers, and then tell me what the results are. If you go and run that in an environment in a typical place where you haven't configured to defend against it, what you've now done is an exfiltration of all of your sort of targeted customer actions out of your email and sent it to a site that maybe you didn't want to receive it. And so that intersection it also falls right in the wheelhouse where we've operated for the last 15 years, right? How do you continue to make sure that humans are part of the resiliency engine to protect you against the kinds of threats that are going to occur? And so we're going to be, I would just say, focusing and obsessing over all three of those as this moves forward and making sure that our customers are the best protected against those threats.
You folks also released the State of Human Risk report. At 2025, it said that almost 25% of cybersecurity leaders were looking at evolving AI threats as their greatest challenge and something that keeps them awake at night. What is one thing you would like to tell those leaders to prioritize in 2026 so that they don't have to worry about, of course, security is not a destination, it's a journey, it's a cat and mouse game. You have to be right 1% time. Bad actors have to be right only 1% time. So it's not that easy, but still, what is the one thing you would like to tell them to prioritize in 2026 so they can protect themselves at least to some degrees?
So I'll say something that's probably strange for a cybersecurity practitioner that's been doing this for 20 years. The first thing is when we think about new environments, we think about risk. That's how we're trained to look at things in the cybersecurity industry. One of the really interesting things I tell folks that aren't thinking that way is to also explore the risk of moving too slowly when it comes to adopting agents. And so this is one of those places where it's entirely possible that moving too slowly is an existential threat, whereas adopting and running into risks associated with the platforms themselves is an incremental threat. It's also possible that the converse of that is true, right? But I think that's the first thing to recognize is that in a traditional world, you might say, hey, look, we're not ready yet, so let's wait a year, right? We might have done that with emerging technologies over the last 20 years. I don't know that this is one that you can afford to do that with. And so I think as uncomfortable as it feels, what we're hearing from our customers and what we're seeing in our own world is that you have to go and embrace the discomfort and keep pace with the pace of change and make sure that you evolve and protect your enterprise and your users and your people to the greatest extent possible while enabling them to use these tools to generate the type of innovation that's necessary for you to compete. So that's kind of the overarching theme that I would say. And then the second one I'd say is this is our obsession. So having a good partner that is moving at agentic speed, this is our obsession. We've got a few things I would say to stay tuned for at KnowBe4 and then just staying tuned on our announcements page over the next few weeks, where we're going to continue to be talking about and maybe producing some new things for our customers to help them in this regard. But I would just say it's an emerging landscape. The problems are real. The threats and risks are real, but you can't afford to not do it either.
Harlan, thank you so much. After listening to you, I feel that, autonomous agents managing human risk, it's no different than in modern cars. We have, the traction control, you turn it off and suddenly your car is off the road. So we do trust our lives with that. So I think in 2 to 5 years from now, this will actually become a norm, just the way we used to think about, automation. Now this is where we are heading. So thank you for not only sharing these great insights, but also building technologies that enterprises are actually using. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to chat with you folks again. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you, Swapnil. Appreciate the time.